Hey there, brilliant performance management students. Steve Willis here. In this video, I'm going to help you get a pass on your upcoming ACCA exam. I'm going to take you through the topic of cost volume profit analysis. We're going to do a past exam question together. That's question Health Nuts from September, December 2020. I'll show you all the exam technique that you need. In this video, we'll do parts A and B together. If you'd like to do parts C and D, go to the end of the video and there's a link to continue watching the debrief. All right, team, let's get started. I'm in the ACCA practice platform. I've opened up the September, December past exam. If you've never been in the practice platform, the link is below in the description. Okay. Now, I've started the exam. I'm looking at the first question. This is question Health Nuts. First thing that I notice, this question is a beast. Look at the scenario here on the left panel. Boy, there is a lot to read. The takeaway is that you really need to practice these past exam questions because it's the exam technique here that's going to get you a pass, not just the technical knowledge. Now, before I get lost in the scenario, I'm going to slide this window over here. I want to focus on the verb and the marks. What do I need to do? I see I've got to calculate number of customers for break-even point. Break-even point in units. I know that from my studies. I have also got to get the margin of safety. I also remember that from my studies. And they want that the second one as a percentage. And we see two services. We see some gym and some cafe. And then we have a brief explanation to finish up. Now that I understand what I need to do, I check the number of marks, and that's going to help me understand my time allocation to this part. I follow a general rule of 1.7 minutes per mark for a Section C question. So for this 20-mark question, you spend 34 minutes, not a moment more. Now, when I'm in the question tackling the individual requirements, that's the 3, the 2, and the 3 over here on the right, I will use 1.5 minutes per mark, not 1.7, to give myself time for reading and planning. And because we've got a spreadsheet here, we can work the two numerical parts together. I'm just going to add those marks up, and I see 8 marks. I'll give myself 1.5 times 8, or 12 minutes in total to do this part A and part B. Now, the next step, after I understand what I need to do and I understand the time allocation, I'm going to make a template, sometimes called a pro forma. That's going to really help me get organized. It's going to help me understand what information I need to find when I read that big scenario. It's going to save me a lot of time. So, coming into the spreadsheet, and I'm just simply going to write down those formulas that I know and love. Make a heading for break-even point. BEP, marking team will understand that abbreviation. How do we calculate a break-even point? Well, that's the fixed costs divided by the contribution per unit. So I'm going to put a fixed cost right here below that. Contribution per unit. Once again, marking team will understand that abbreviation. And 1 divided by the other is the break-even point. So that's the first part. Second part is a margin of safety. Well, how do we calculate that? Let's make a heading, getting organized. Well, a margin of safety is going to be my current activity level, my sales activity. So current activity. Once we know our current activity level, the margin of safety is simply the percentage that that current activity can drop before we hit our break-even point. We do that in percentage terms, and we can then get MOS, margin of safety. Marking team will understand that abbreviation. Now, check this out. I double click on a column separator to auto enlarge that. I see we've got two products. We've got a gym. We've got a cafe. I've just left a line there just to make it a bit easier to read. Remember, there are no marks for formatting, no marks for colors, for bolding, so keep it really simple. Just lay out your work step by step as I'm showing you here. And if you use this approach, guys, you can exploit a really cool thing in the marking, which is called the own figure rule. So the markers will not punish you twice for one mistake. So let's say you made a mistake in the break in the fixed costs. You would lose the credit at that line, but everything you did with cell B4 would be assumed correct, okay? And you can only get that own figure rule if your work is laid out neatly like this. Okay, guys, I've gotten you started. Now, I want you to enlarge this window. You can put it 50-50 now. Pause the video. See if you can find those figures in the scenario. Try this on your own. Then continue watching and we'll check our work together. Welcome back. Let's rock this question. Well, the fixed costs are right there. One of them is easy to find, the 48,000, and the other one is buried in the paragraph below, the 3,600. So let's plug those figures in. Next step, contribution per unit. You remember, contribution per unit is the selling price minus all of the variable costs. Production, non-production. Any variable cost comes out. So that contribution will be equal to the selling price, and we have two revenue lines. We've got the access to the gym and the parking. The parking is the little trick, right? So it's going to be 8.4 is the gym revenue plus 0.8. That's the percentage of people that will pay for parking times 1. And that is my revenue line. From that, I need to subtract that variable cost, 1.2, and there we are. So the break-even point will be equal to the 48,000 divided by the 6,000. Let's now do the cafe contribution. A little more difficult because the figures are buried in this lower paragraph here. And I see a lot to do. So I'm going to make a tactical decision. I'm going to cruise over here to the right, and I will do my contribution per unit as a side working. The longer, the more complicated your formula, guys, the more likely it is to have an error. So it's always a good idea to do complicated things in a step-by-step approach. So let's just make a note to the marking team, contribution per unit for cafe. And we have the drinks revenue line, the food revenue line. We add up the contribution from both, and we get that total contribution that we need. And I look at the question, and we see that the revenue is 2.2, and 60% will buy drinks, 0.6 multiplied by the 0.6. They say profit margin, they mean contribution margin. That's kind of confusing. If you are unsure of something, you always make a note to the marking team, and we can do that right here. Assume the profit margin is contribution margin. If you're confused by something, don't feel bad. The whole room, the whole exam hall is confused. Just make a note and keep it moving. Don't get bogged down. So I've made a note. The food, let me just copy that down. Copy, paste, swap out the 0.6 for the 0.4. And the sum of those two figures will be the contribution for a cafe customer, 1.144. Let's just use cell addressing. You can set E5 equal to H6. Let's be efficient. We can copy the formula in C6 over to E6, copy, paste. There it is. There it is not. That looks kind of messy. It's not a round number. It's a messy figure. We can't have a partial customer. We can't have a 0.8 customer, so we need to round that up. There's two things we could do. We could just retype the 3146 to a 3147, or we could use this cool function right here. Check it out. Cool spreadsheet tip. Round up is a nice function that's here in the practice platform and in the computer-based exams. You hit the comma to set the next argument, and you put 0. That's the number of decimal places. Guys, there you have the round up function, giving us a nice clean number, 3147. Moving on to the next part, guys. Margin of safety. Well, the current activity, a little bit of a puzzle here. We've got to dig around in the paragraphs and find that. And we see that we have 30 days and 330 customers per day in a month. So we do 330 times 30. We can grab that break-even point from the calculation above, hit return. Margin of safety will then be equal to the current activity minus the break-even point. That's the change in activity to hit break-even point over the current activity. And what do we know about the cafe? We can look around there. And they tell us that half of the customers use the cafe. So we can set current activity of the cafe equal to 0.5 of the gym. Break-even point will be equal to that figure in cell E6. Let's copy that same formula to get the margin of safety. Copy, paste. Guys, that is unreadable, that is unusable information to me. I mentioned there are no marks for formatting, but if the marking team can't understand your work, that's a problem. So at this point, we'll do a tactical format. It's going to make it easier for us and the markers to understand our work. They want it in percentage. We come up here, we'll do percentage, let's say 1 decimal place is fine. And there we have the solution to parts A1 and A2. We could even label that now, make it a tiny bit clearer. Any clarity for the marking team will be appreciated. Last but not least, we need 3 marks to talk about 2 things: the numbers and what they mean. So I will use simple, short sentences written in an easy to understand way, as if I were writing an email to a friend at work. I'm going to avoid the academic tone that I see in the model solutions. There are no marks for writing with fancier vocabulary. Okay? Let me show you what I would do for the final part 3. Break-even point tells us the number of customers needed to cover all our costs. Below break-even, the business is in losses. Above, and the business is in profits. Margin of safety gives us additional info about how far sales can drop before we hit the break-even point. And we can see from the numbers above that both business units have similar margins of safety. Sales can drop about 1/3 and they will still cover their fixed costs and be in profit. There you have it. Simple, direct, easy to understand writing style will get you just as many marks as a verbose academic style. Guys, if you want to watch more of Health Nuts, here is the link. Go to my website, www.acccaexamhelp.com, and you can watch the rest of this question. Team, good luck on your upcoming exam.